It says you're live. Okay, it says you're live. Here, hit close on that. Okay, are we getting... Let me make sure we're getting sound out of the YouTube feed here. Just make absolutely certain of that. It should be. That's mute. All right, are we getting sound out of YouTube here? I hope we are. Okay, I'm hearing this on here. All right, well, YouTube will tell us if they're not hearing anything. In the meantime...
YouTube never works.
Unfortunately, no. Let's see if I do that. That doesn't do anything. All right, look, we'll just see what happens. If I need to restart YouTube, I can. But in the meantime, let me just make Instagram start anyway.
Oh, Instagram didn't start yet?
No, I have to manually start that.
I was like, man.
And all right, we're on Insta Live, and we are going to YouTube. I
mean, from here it looks good, so I can't.
I mean, it looks good. I'm just looking at the sound bar on there, making sure that sound is going through on there. I don't necessarily see it right now, but again, we'll look at that later. Yeah, when people log on there, we'll be able to check it from there. And if not, we still have this. It's telling everyone, okay, now people are starting to join the feed on here. That's really good. All right. So we'll see what happens with YouTube. Anyway, what's going on, everyone? This is BORASCAST number 11. Yes, the podcast goes to 11. There, we got the joke out of the way.
Did you even have to do the joke?
Yes, I did have to do the joke. It's right there. Okay, it's right there.
Just because it's there doesn't mean you take it.
Yeah, it does. You have to take every opportunity. You know how this industry works. You never know what could happen.
True.
There
is the whole cringe factor.
There's no cringe with goes to 11.
Yeah, okay.
I know this for a fact. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. So, most of you recognize this guy. This is my friend Joe Knecht. Joe's up here right now because we're doing a whole bunch of gigs and writing and all kinds of stuff. And we're rehearsing for other gigs and really cool stuff. We're filming some content together, some music related stuff. And actually, one of the things we're going to talk about in some of those videos, we're going to discuss a little bit on here too. So first off, thanks for doing this, dude. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. So Joe, as you know, plays keys and guitar and second guitar in the band. And we've actually just done an extensive round of rehearsals for a really great gig we played in Cambridge last night with Orange Peel Mystic and with Lizzie and the Makers, whom I've known for about 10 years now. But hadn't seen her for a bit, so it was good to see her again. Great crowd, great everything, and we've been doing an extensive amount of rehearsals. And what I want to talk about today is, well, a few different things. But one of the really important things that I want to talk about is the things that go into show prep that people don't necessarily talk about. What I mean is, all right, let's just go into what you do, what we all know that we do when we're prepping for the first series of rehearsals with a band. All right. So let's say you've just joined a band. All right. Or you're doing sideman work for them and they send you a list of songs that you're going to play. So you learn the songs, you learn your parts and whatever. And yeah, and just tell us the standard things you do when you're practicing on your own.
I mean, obviously, one of the first things you would do is make sure you know the songs.
Yes.
As far as just being able to hear a song title, and go, oh yeah, that song. And then of course making sure you know your part, and you also know if you're going to need to do anything extra,
Right.
as in like changing sounds. So if I'm learning the keyboard part or reviewing the keyboard part, I like to think like, okay, how many sounds am I going to change? That sort of thing. And same thing with any guitar part. Do I have to go to clean,
That's
or do
right.
I stay on just a crunch channel, or that sort of thing? Because that's something that you do have to kind of practice. That a
Yeah.
lot of people, I'll kind of overlook it too. You get so caught up on like running riffs and running, all the licks and everything, and then you forget, oh yeah, going into this, I have to go from clean to crunchy, or crunchy to a lead toner, whatever. And that little extra button step will throw you off more than you think, even if you practice the heck out of that song.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It really is choreography that you got to learn. You have to learn the choreography for your feet if you're talking about changing sounds for a guitar, or extra choreography you got to do with your hands, because like it's an added element of muscle memory. You can't just play the song through. You got to work in where your hand's going to go to change a sound if you're doing it manually, or if you are using foot pedals with a keyboard.
You still have to do that, and you will also have to factor in, or you using your other foot for another pedal.
Right.
So like if I'm doing any sort of piano stuff or pad stuff where I'm using the sustain pedal, if I have a foot switch to change patches, then I would have to factor that in so I don't fall.
Right. Exactly.
Or if I'm using my hands, which is what I do, I'll use the sustain pedal to keep the sound going while I change patches.
Yes, exactly.
Downside is, of course, there are certain parts that I'll have to kind of cut short and just leave it as a sustain note
Right.
to make the patch sound seamless. But
Yes.
pros and cons to each, because if I go foot switch, I'll have to factor in making sure I can stay balanced.
Right.
And of course, that would be a third pedal.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, that's the basic. Yeah. Those are the basic things. You make sure that you actually know the song. You use your ears, or the transcription or whatever. Make sure you're grabbing every single note. You're playing all the right voicings of each chord, and you get it to the point where you can play through. One of the greatest quotes I've ever heard is, "You should be able to play the set all the way through, front to back." This is before you meet up with the band. You should be able to play the set all the way through, front to back, without listening to the song, just by yourself and your instrument.
Yeah.
Ideally, that is what you should be able to do. Now, let's go into the next layer. And this is the layer that kind of, I think, stumps people when they first join a band.
This is the layer, I feel like, if you're not aware of it,
Right.
this is the one that you'll overlook, and
Yes.
you'll be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
And then it'll come back to hit you, and you'll be like, damn.
Yes, exactly. And that layer is, and we've both encountered this in various different circumstances. When you first learn a song and you're practicing it, you are practicing with the recording. Now, the recording, so there's a few elements here. Let's just talk about time. The recording is never
So right
gonna
off
move.
the bat, that depends on the genre or the era of music you're learning.
Well, yes.
Because if you're joining a cover band or a GB band, and you're playing along to some Motown or earlier stuff, then the timing's gonna be, you're gonna be playing to something that has fluctuated timing,
Right.
and that's something you're gonna have to factor in.
Right.
Versus a newer recording where they were playing to a click.
Yes. But even then, what I mean is that, like, the recording itself,
It's always going to be consistent.
it's going to be consistent
Yeah,
every
if
time you
there,
practice.
yeah, and so if there is a timing issue, it's always going to be measure whatever at 60 seconds in.
Yes.
That timing's always going to be there.
Right.
There's plenty of people where they're not going to be consistent,
Yes.
and they're going to have a different feel than you.
Exactly. That's the really big thing, because a lot of times you'll be practicing with the recording and you'll be like, yes, I got this. It's I'm very tight.
and you do like you get it tight to the recording. You're like, oh man, I'm nailing all the changes. I'm nailing all my patch changes.
Yes.
My moving's good. Everything's good. And then you play what you do your first run through with the band, and you're like, why did I sound like ass?
Right, exactly. Why is this not? Yeah, this sounded yeah, the thing everyone likes to say. It sounded great last night when I was practicing, but won't go into that. But
Oh yeah, they're like, oh, I was nailing it.
yeah, which again, we've all said that. By the way, YouTube, let us know if the sound is coming through, if there's any issues, please. Or if anyone on here is watching on YouTube and the Insta stream, let us know, please. Because if YouTube's not working again, I'll just cancel that and we'll just do it all from here. But because I'm trying to monitor both. So basically what has to happen, and again, this is just the timing we're looking at. We'll look at all the other elements in a second. But just the timing alone, when you basically once you learn all the songs correctly in your room at home, when you get with the band, in a way you kind of need to relearn the song. And I don't mean
It's not really learning the song. You have to learn how to play different.
Yes.
And it's a way that you can't practice at home.
Right.
Necessarily, you can really only work on it when you're with the band because it's part of the playing off of the other band members.
Yes. And so what you need to do is you got to get used to, if you haven't played with those other band members before, you have to get used to playing with them, just like you got used to playing with the recording. And then you think, well, how do I do that besides just running the song a million times? Well, number one, that's part of it. You do have to get used to playing with those other individuals, whether it's a full band scenario where there's a drummer, keyboard player, another guitarist, vocalist, whatever. But you also need to let's go into how you work
You
with
need to learn the other people's tendencies.
Yes.
And you also have to be aware of how certain parts are intended to be played.
Right.
So for some people, someone like you might not realize this until you play with other people. But you might I pull a little bit. That's my tendency. So when people play with me, that's something they'll kind of realize. And of course, that's something I have to realize when I play with other people who might not pull. I have to change my playing a little bit so I can line up with them.
Right.
And be more aware of how they play. Another thing you have to be aware of is, for example, you do more legato.
Yes.
I tend to do more picking. So there were instances where we'd be playing a line together, and all the notes would be there and the timing would be okay, but it would still sound kind of off, only to find out who's doing it legato and I'm picking most of the notes.
Right.
And those two slight variations are clashing. Or who's doing it bending, holding it, I'm bending and not holding it. And same thing, all the notes and timing are there and the bends can be accurate, but if I'm bending and doing a big vibrato and who's just bending and holding a note, it's gonna sound off.
Or if one person's sliding into a note, but another person's
going
not.
going right into it.
Yeah. And those are the things that and these are all, and everything we're listing right now is all stuff that actually we both have encountered in rehearsals. And that's kind of what prompted us to want to talk about this, because now we have our own, as the band leader, these are the things that I like to hone in on when we're practicing songs, especially if it's a brand new song that either I've written and just brought to the band, or if it's a new cover, or even if it's a song we just haven't played in a while, because we've encountered it with everything. Like, can I tell the story about when I first brought Absolute Power in?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's a really good example. So for those of you that have heard my album, I like to do a lot of quick unison lines, quick 16th cascading unison lines that he and I will either harmonize together we'll either harmonize the 16th note lines, or we will play them in unison together or an octave apart, and the bass player will join us with those as well. And so the opening track on my record, there's a little bit of a preamble, and then the whole band kicks in with this really quick part. And after I first wrote that song, I sent the transcription out to everyone, and everyone sat with it for like 2-3 weeks. And then we got together for a couple of weeks before the first run of gigs where we were going to debut that song. And Joe and I got together in the same apartment, and I said, "All right, let's try this song." The first time either of us had played it with another player before.
Right.
So we go into that line.
Just naturally, it starts off. The intro starts off good because it's not in unison.
Yeah,
and then of course, we go into that line, and it immediately sounded like there was slapback.
Yeah, it just sounded like a mess.
Yeah, and lines like that, especially on a really low register, have to be really tight, or else they'll just there's no in between of, well, it sounded all right. It's either it sounds good or trash.
Right. And again, we had both been practicing on our own at home.
Yeah, like you could clearly tell that the other person spent time working on it, so we knew it wasn't an issue of, oh well, you just didn't focus on it as much as you should have.
No, exactly. Yeah, both of us could play it to a click and get all the notes.
Yeah, like we were sitting there playing it slowly, and we're like, all right, that's okay. All right, you do it by yourself. Let me listen. I'll do it by myself. You listen. All right, the sound goes separate. Okay, so then let's bring it up. Man, it's not sounding right. And then it turned out, since that's a legato lick, and I'm so used to picking everything, I just wasn't articulating my notes as hard and as cleanly as I should have.
Right.
So once I made, like, as soon as I made that adjustment to my left hand, it immediately sounded 10 times better.
Right.
Obviously, it took us a little bit more to get the synth better, but that cleaned it up, like, right then and there. That little change that took us like a good hour or so to try to figure out what it was. And then we went to like get coffee, and we were just like, I don't know what you're doing, but just figure it out when I get back.
Okay, like, I think I was a little more articulate.
No, it was pretty much like that. You were like, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna go get coffee. You try to figure it out while I'm gone. It was literally something like that. And I'm like, all right.
Now everybody thinks I'm an ass.
Nah, that's just how it is. Sometimes you just gotta be like, yo, I don't know what's going on, but figure it out. And then I realized it, and I'm like, wait, I think this is the problem. Who comes back? We have coffee, and I'm like, yeah, I think I figured it out. Sure enough, we ran it again. And there it was. And no, he's not an asshole. That's just how we communicate.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, like, seriously, even when you're really good friends, when you're trying to get something tight and together, sometimes you just gotta say, like, dude, I don't know what it is. It's just not sounding right.
Yeah.
Try to figure it out. Like that.
Or something like, yeah, or even something like, no, that's not picked. You got to do a hammer on there. It's like, no, you need to slide into that. And it's like, okay. And you do the same for me too when we've played your song. Yeah. Same deal. So, and not only that, and that's just the timing. Now, how do you really, really make sure you're meshing together? You got to try it clean and distorted. So literally, we sit there. I think we even like turned all of our effects and amps off completely and just listened to the acoustic electric guitars in the room.
Yeah.
And then we try to just clean with the click going, and then you could hear it even more so in there, and then you adapt it for distortion afterwards.
Oftentimes it's easier. I mean, it's always good to practice at a high volume so you can get used to controlling that sound
and that's another aspect we gotta delve into as well.
So you get used to controlling it at a high volume. However, sometimes, especially when you're in a small venue or a small rehearsal space and everything's cranked and you got your earplugs mashing as hard as they can because it's so loud, sometimes it's hard to pick out certain things. So rehearsing, doing like sectionals at a low volume can be really good just to making sure everything's tight.
Right.
And then when you bring it back up to band level.
Yeah. And again, we're just talking about lead lines right now. I mean, let's talk about chord work and stuff like that. Even then, there'll be times where there'll be times when
Oh, before that, sometimes you have to talk about the dumbest shit, like a slide.
well, yes,
Because there's the one part of that intro where you do the slide and you pick the note at a certain fret.
right,
And it's literally like two notes, do, do. And same thing, we spent more time on that little slide trying to get that in sync than you would think.
right,
Only because, again, if it sounded slightly off, it just didn't sound good and it would lose its intended effect.
yes.
But again, like you listen to that part and you think, yeah, you focus on all the 16th notes, but you also have to focus on little shit like that slide.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and the obvious stuff. Make sure you're all sliding to the correct fret. Uh,
Oh, well, that, yeah, and then sometimes you just don't.
yeah,
I hate when I do it. So it always happens when it's like a really nice harmony, so it's super obvious.
right, right, right. Yeah, it's just all of a sudden. Wait. I didn't write a minor second in here. That's not what this is supposed to be.
Oh yeah, we're just gonna reharm everything into quarter tone minor seconds.
Yeah. We're just gonna make everything sound like 20th century classical music. Perfect. But yeah, and everything all right on the YouTube feed? I haven't gotten any feedback on that yet. But yeah, just comment on there or on here if anything seems off, please. So, but yeah, that's the thing too. And then well, here's another thing too. Let's talk about when you're holding a chord, and I don't mean an arpeggio, but you hold a chord and you're gonna pick all the notes while you're holding that
Yeah,
chord and
yeah,
let it ring out.
yeah, you are arpeggiated in that.
Yeah. I'm talking about that as opposed to, do 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 dee 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 do 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 do
Yeah,
dee dee, as opposed to that. So again, you could be playing that by yourself with the recording and it sounds great, but then again, get with the other player who may be doing the same thing. Or even if the other player's not doing the
and
same thing,
depending on what the chord is, they might be doing it in a different position.
different position, they might be
Like there is some stuff that I'll do at a higher position on, say, the seventh string.
yes.
Not necessarily for your stuff, but another guy I play with, Manuel. He likes to use really big stretch chords.
Yeah.
So sometimes for some of his stuff, I'll go up to the seventh string, just because it'll move it from like the third fret up to the 10th fret, and I
Yeah.
can actually hit same chord, and depending on what chord it is, might even be the exact same finger and just up a string.
Yeah.
But that's of course going to make it sound a little different. So if I want to blend better with him, I could maybe pick differently or move my pick.
Right.
Or that's just something that you're going to hear and deal with, that it sounds a little different.
Yeah. The thing is, yeah, it's just for just about every note on the guitar, there's six. What is it? There's six middle C's on the electric guitar, isn't it? Is it six or
No, I
seven?
don't think it's six.
I need a guitar. There's multiple middle C's on the guitar, and this is
And
the
this is amplified when you add more strings.
exactly. And you get so
This is also why the guitar is the most annoying instrument to read sheet music on.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's why when you're reading sheet music for guitar, you have to analyze what you're seeing in the passage and think what position makes the most sense to be able to grab everything in time.
Yeah, and then where are you going after that? So are you gonna have to jump all the way down here? Maybe you play it down here and make the jump less.
Right.
Even when there's tab, sometimes sometimes you have to come up with something different because the way they wrote it doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And going back to the timbre, yeah, playing G on the E string at the third fret
It's
is
gonna be different than playing it on, say, a low B string on. I think we'll do the eighth.
it would
Yeah, we'll
be
do the eighth
yes,
fret.
it would be the eighth fret. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to sound totally different, and that
Even
might not
though it's
work.
the same G, like if you wrote it in regular notation, it would be the same G. The only reason you would play it on each string is either if you wanted a different sound, or if the context of the music makes it easier for you to play that G.
Right.
Like, this is an obvious one, but if the riff is pedaling off of like an open B,
Right.
then every note you're gonna play is probably gonna be on that string, so you can just keep pedaling.
Right. Exactly.
Easily.
Although someone might write for you to play the notes that it's pedaling off of on a different string, but you may not know that initially if you're just reading the sheet music. And then when you get in with the other player, they might be like, "Why isn't this working?" Oh, you're playing those extra notes on the other string. Oh, well, now I have to relearn this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Well,
yeah.
like if both guitar players are doing an open, like something with open chords or something where you're arpeggiating chords and letting the notes in, same thing. Just like with doing all those harmonized or unison runs, you have to make sure both of you are playing the right chords and the right notes, and that your picking's in time. Otherwise, it'll sound same thing. It'll just sound mushy.
Right.
So you have to put basically just as much time and effort in doing those picked chord melodies or whatever, or going over chord changes as you do going over harmonized lines or licks.
Now, some people watching this might think, well, duh, isn't this aren't all these articulations and things written in the sheet music?
No,
They aren't always.
I mean, for one
If you're
thing,
doing straight up classical music, then yes, they will be.
I should mention like the context we're generally talking about here is rock band.
Yes,
Like
rock,
your
metal,
typical
whatever.
rock, pop, even when you get into like good, cover bands,
Yes.
that sort of thing.
Right.
And in that context, unless the person doing the transcription, really knows the theory and wants to get it as detailed as possible, chances are they're just gonna write the notation with tab underneath.
Right.
And maybe chord symbols above, or if it's specific voicings.
Right. Yeah, and so
Everything else is just going to be you listening to the song. Like, they're not even going to tell you, like, you'll be lucky if they'll tell you, oh, distorted guitar.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that should be, if you're listening to a recording, that should just be
I
intuitive
mean,
anyway.
obviously, that's
That's
obvious.
just that's Captain Obvious over here. But yeah, so yeah, we're talking about those things where it's not always, it's not the most obvious.
Well, it's also stuff that you overlook because you can go into a show, low rehearsal with a game plan in your head, like, oh, we're gonna do this and it's gonna be great, and then it ends up like, oh, we're gonna practice all this, and I already know that. But then you get into the heat of the moment, and you get sidetracked working on something else, or an issue that you didn't realize was gonna comes up, and you work on that, and then all of a sudden your 4 hours is up,
Yeah.
and you walk out of there and you're like, wow, we have to work on a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
Or you walk out of there like, man, I don't know why it's not sounding right. Only because you didn't focus on the nitty gritty. You just focused on.
That's what we're looking at, is
Yeah.
the real nitty gritty that they just you don't hear about really. You don't
Like
really
moving gear.
well, that's a whole other discussion right there.
That is especially when it's on a different level and there's no elevator.
Yes, we've all done that before. The best part is when everyone's helping move all the gear into, we're not complaining. This is just part of the gig. You got to move everything in and then set everything up, and then you got to play, and your hands, are they're all sticky and gross, and you got to be able to maneuver. But that's why you get everything in, and you take that precaution of, if your hands are a bit sticky, you put some talcum powder on them, you wash your hands, you put some finger ease on your fretboard, or if you're the piano player, you just same thing, just wash your hands, dry them, make sure.
I mean, really, it's just a matter of making sure your hands are clean.
Yes, of course.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
And going to the stage, this is the other thing too, is that, and everyone that performs live music knows this, even after you've taken care of all the stuff that we've talked about, we're not even done talking about it yet, but after you've taken care of all that nitty gritty and then you're in rehearsal and everything is sounding tight and all the notes are right there, all the articulations and the energy, you practiced in a rehearsal studio. Now you're on stage, you're in a totally different environment with lights and people and everything, and the sound is totally different. So naturally,
you don't
everything's
have,
going to feel completely different.
not to mention, if you even have a sound check,
Right.
Most like our gig last night, we were lucky that every band got to do a quick sound check.
Yeah, and the sound engineer knew what they were doing.
Yeah, she was very good.
Yeah.
A lot of times, though, you hear the stories, you're not going to have that.
Right.
And the thing that, and this is really obsessed with how well you know your part, because there have been plenty of times where we've done sound check, like, as in, you hit a note and the engineer goes, "Yeah, I got signal," and then you start playing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, "Oh, great! All I hear is drums and lead. I couldn't hear myself."
Or just drums and
Drums,
a little, just a teeny bit of you and that.
Yeah,
person.
occasionally you get like glimpses of yourself,
Right.
and then sometimes it's like, "Wait, am I even coming out of the speaker?" And then there's like a part where you start a song, and it's like, "Oh yeah, there I am."
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is that the live environment in so many ways is just going to feel completely different for a variety of reasons. The sound, the room, the light show, the energy coming off of the audience. So that's why you need, this is why when you, I'm going to quote Zach on this one. When you rehearse, you don't rehearse the songs, you rehearse the show. So what that means is when you're in rehearsal, you shouldn't just stand there, depending on how big your rehearsal space
Yeah, I mean, now
is.
that's the tricky part. I mean, that's also, I mean, like, again, last night we were on a pretty tight stage. So, for example, Max and Zach could move a little bit, but because I had a keyboard next to me,
Yeah.
I could barely move without smacking into something. Or it's kind of funny. Occasionally, when I was playing keyboards, or where I was standing, when Ethan would do a big fill on the cymbals, I would feel like the cymbal like brush against my back.
That's funny.
So I was feeling.
You did knock me in the head once with your headstock.
I did. Dude, I'm sorry because
No, not last night.
Oh
last
yeah,
year.
I was gonna say, like, wait a minute, I don't remember that last night.
No, I would have said something.
Yeah,
Not accusing.
that was
would have been
that
like,
was something I was worried about too when I saw how closely we were. I was like, man, this is where a headless would be really handy because, yeah,
they do come in handy that way. Yeah, I do remember when I knocked into your headstock.
Oh yeah, I remember that because I remember
I've done that 2 times.
I remember when I felt that through the head, like vibrate through the neck, and as I was playing, I was like, ooh, that hurt. I know, I'm like, yeah, that hurt.
Oh, and my D string's out of tune.
Oh yeah. Oh, my D string's out of tune, and I have a clean part coming up. Awesome.
That's always that.
Hey guys, you guys like microtonal music?
Right. But yeah, but so the thing too is that, like, assuming if you go into rehearsal, let's say you're in dress rehearsal now, you got to try and practice putting on an actual show. That means don't just stand there playing your parts. You got to be able to move around.
And don't just play the songs. Do a full run through and think about your transitions. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're, say, a punk band or a pop punk band, and your guitar player and bass player sticking in one tuning and using one instrument, then sure, you could just go from song to song.
Right.
But so you're going from one tuning to another, whether that's changing guitars, turning a pedal on and off, so on and so forth. you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this quickly and how are we going to keep the show moving. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a band play and then they stop their show while the guitar player takes their time and changes guitars
I touched on this.
without anything happening.
Yeah, I touched on this in the I think it was the last podcast I did. Uh, yeah, that's the thing. Building the show is a whole art form in and of itself. Like, and Joe will tell you this. For me, I don't want there to be like any silence between the songs at all, unless it's just like a boom, thank you, next song, like that. Okay, but as far as just
Yeah,
like
unless and then silence with
hey,
nothing, and then silence with nothing happening while the band sets up for the next song. Even if it's just the front man or one of the band members talking to the crowd, that's better than nothing. But again, if you're gonna
but
do
that's an art form in and of
yeah, if you're
itself.
gonna do that, like no joke, the first couple shows, Max and I sat together and wrote out like an outline
Yes,
of what he would say in between songs and where he would say it. Just to avoid this, we quickly realized that we're not going to go up to the mic in public and be able to improvise and interact with the crowd. We kind of got to like plan out what we're going to say.
right. And then you can improvise according to how the crowd reacts to you.
Oh yeah, like write it, like plan out your transitions, but also expect that you might have to improvise anyway. Because again, sometimes you realize you're eating up too much time, and you might have to cut an ending short.
Yeah,
Or the unknown technical difficulty might happen with, say, the bass rig, and who needs like 2 seconds to fix something.
right.
So maybe the drummer does a quick solo or something.
Well, and then you get the hilarious Iron Maiden mission from Ari story.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we don't need to go into that. You can Google that one. But yeah, it's very important how you segue from song to song. Like just building a set list in and of itself is an art form. Every song has a reason for being on that set list in that specific spot. But then how do you go from that song to that song? And sometimes you can just go straight into the
Yeah,
next one.
then sometimes you can obviously do the big ending, whole chord, drummer goes to cymbal thing,
Right.
and then you just count off into the next song. Especially when you start your show, that's always good, right? Typically, the bands do like 2, 3 songs,
In a
and then
row.
yeah, in a row, and then the Scott and the singer, if they have one, will interact with the crowd.
Yes. And one of the things I love that we do is well, there's a bunch of things. I mean, I love all the different ways we'll transition from song to song. But one of the things we did was we composed transitions and then made samples of them for whenever everyone needs to not only switch guitars, but check tunings and whatnot. Uh,
Yeah, and we timed it so it's like a minute. So, and a minute doesn't sound like much, but in stage time,
it's an eternity.
that's a long time. And again, the goal is to not let the sample run all the way through. Ideally, we would change before it ends and just stop it and
Yeah,
start the next song. But at the very least, at least while we're doing something, like checking tunings, changing guitars, changing tunings, doing that sort of thing, at least the audience is hearing not only something, but something written out that's, building the tension, getting them, hopefully excited for the next song.
right. And musically, it makes sense because it also helps when you're going from
Oh yeah,
songs that are in two completely different keys.
oh yeah, that's what I was gonna just say. That's one thing when you're putting songs together. Obviously, you don't have to make your set list go around a circle of fifths or anything like that. But it's something to be aware of okay, first song's in A major, second song's in G sharp minor.
Right.
Like, how, sure, you could just go right into it, but maybe that's when you don't do the dramatic big ending. You just stop and then go right in.
Right. Yeah, and but we did do the circle of fits thing with one of your samples,
Yeah,
I
but
believe. Yeah.
well, that was because the placement that we were trying to get from like G to E flat
Yeah.
or something like that.
I think it was E flat to G, but yeah.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, then we did kind of do something like that. But that,
Which
you
was
know,
which was fun. That
yeah.
was fun to do. But yeah, it's all those kinds of things. Or like you said before, drum solo, make the drummer go from just to give us time to switch between things. Or another thing too, not even using samples, just you go to the keyboard and we'll play something as a segue.
But that's
We
another
do
thing.
that
So like
often.
when I do that, what for some songs I'll put my guitar down because it is easier to play keyboards when you don't have your guitar strapped in front of you.
Right.
But that's another thing. So like since we don't want silence, I have to make sure the keyboard's on like a synth pad that has a long sustain. So I can hold notes with the pedal while I take my guitar off and get ready.
Yeah.
But before I even do that, I have to know, okay, when this song ends, I have to immediately hit a key and get it rolling for the next song.
Yeah.
So while we're playing the song, towards the end, I'll like start walking back towards my keyboard.
Right.
And sure, I might not be able to stand in front and finish the harmonies right next to you, which will look cool. But I'm right there, so that way, as soon as we end, I can immediately hit a note, grab the pedal, take my guitar off, and then switch over to the piano sound and start playing.
Right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all those things, and there's so many different ways you can
And
make
you have to
songs go
factor
from.
in how long it'll. And I like one thing I did is I had to factor in when I'm walking behind the keyboard, especially because I knew like that it was going to be a small stage, so it takes you an extra second to move around.
Right.
So obviously, when the part of the song I made the move was to let a part where I was just holding chords.
Right.
Otherwise I would not have been able to move behind the keyboard and execute some of those harmonies cleanly.
Right.
So that's another thing. Like if you're gonna move to a certain spot, you have to think about what part of the song you want to move.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is set length as well. You can't just go into.
And you have to factor in the time between songs. Like sure, it might only add up to like 2-3 minutes,
That's still a
but
lot, though.
that's still a lot, and that is enough time that can either make or break you getting called back to the venue or people being pissed off at you because you delayed the show.
Yeah, yeah. Part of designing a set list, the first step is when if you're making a playlist on your computer, let's say you have recordings of all the songs, you put them together, and then you think, oh, and then you look at the time, you look at the length of the playlist, and let's say you're given
Let's say you're getting like 40 minutes
40
and
minutes.
their playlist ends up being 40 minutes when you play all the songs. That's great. And that's a good like start.
Yes.
Expect to cut a song because that doesn't factor in even if you're not making any instrument change at all, you still have to end the song, look at each other, and count off the next song, which
Right.
still adds like 5 seconds. And again, 5 seconds is not a lot of time, but 5 seconds in between a set list of 8 songs adds 40 seconds right there. And again, that could be just enough time that the engineer cuts your sound halfway through your last song
Or
because
even
you're
if or
going
even
over
if
time.
or even if they don't, you're immediately cutting into the next band's set.
Or at the very least, they're coming into their teardown time and their setup time, which, depending on the venue and the event, you might have a bit. No, you will always have not enough time.
Yeah.
So,
And you start cutting into someone else's set time
so all
because
of a sudden, that like badass list of 8 bangers that you have, all of a sudden you're gonna have to sit there and go, what song can we cut?
right. And we had to do that.
Yeah, and it sucks because obviously, ideally, you like every song that you put on the set list. That's why it's on the set list.
Right.
But sometimes you have to think, okay, I'd rather cut this song and save it for another time.
Right.
I mean, that's the silver lining, though. Okay, we cut this song this time, but maybe next time we'll swap it out for another song.
Right.
And then that's a slight variation of the set, so that show will be different.
Right. And that's the thing. You don't want to just repeat unless you're on a tour and everything's got like video screens and stuff.
Oh, well, if you're on a tour
You got to keep a consistent
and
set
it's
list
wearing
night
like
after night.
an album or and you're doing a specific show, then yeah, it has to be consistent. Especially because you're not going to have time to rehearse any new material unless your band has a backlog of songs that everyone knows super well and you can just swap out.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, does anyone have any questions for us? By the way, if you do, please ask them here on the YouTube feed. Seems to still be going. Again, no one said anything, so I'm gonna guess it's all right. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please just field them right here. So, oh, and then here's another thing we didn't necessarily touch on. So we're talking about like just the physical execution of everything and making sure everyone's playing the right thing and all the articulations are there and your timing is right. But then tone and having the right internal balance within your band. That's another huge thing.
One thing, yeah, it's similar, obviously, with recording
Yes.
and everything else. Your tone might not sound good by itself. That's
Right.
one thing you have to kind of tell yourself. Your rhythm tone by itself, isolated, might sound kind of bad, but when it's in the mix of the band, then it sounds really good.
Right.
That's kind of the first like little head hurdle you have to get over.
Right.
Because again, when you're dialing in your tone, you're in your bedroom, your home studio, your rehearsal space even, and when you're dialing it in, you're dialing it in by yourself.
And you're just like, this sounds awesome.
And sure, you can check it against the recording and say anything, man, this blends with the recording. Awesome, it blends with the recording in a quiet room in a home environment. Now
Now
how
get in a
does it,
rehearsal space.
yeah, how does it
everyone.
sound when it's cranked up to compete with acoustic drums? You might realize, oh, I need to set my gate higher.
Yep. I may need to back off the game.
Yeah, oh, I need to back off the gate because it's cutting my notes too much. Or I had too much high end. Or, oh, wow, or most of the time what ends up happening is you have too much low end.
Yes.
Because again, you're dialing it in by yourself, so you're like, oh, I want a nice, thick, full sound.
Right.
You're not dialing it in with the idea of, I'm going to sit here in the mix, bass sits here, kick drum sits here, vocals, if you have them, sit here.
Right. That's the thing. And again, you can't do that on your own at home necessarily. That's something you have to do. Your band ideally should go into one of those rehearsals to do basically tuning. I don't mean tuning your instruments. I mean tuning your internal balance. You got to figure out, you got to gauge it song by song and figure out how is this going to sound altogether. How am I going to make my part
So obviously,
blend the most with all the other instruments?
it goes without saying, and people will hear this and think, well, yeah, no shit. But you want to make sure you're rehearsing with what you're going to use live.
Yeah.
And again, it sounds obvious, but someone might have a rehearsal space and they have their favorite amp and cabinet there, but then when they go out, they use, say, a Line 6 Helix or an Axe Effects. If you're practicing all the time with your amp and cab, but you're not going to take them live, then you're going to be in for a whole world of surprises when you set up that different rig live, and your muscle memory doesn't work because you weren't practicing with it.
Yeah.
Even if it's convenient to rehearse because it's already set up.
Yeah. And then even if you're on a tour and you're renting gear from other people, what you got to do is you just got to you have to be able to adapt in the moment, because so many bands will rent gear and you're not always going to be able to rent exactly what you rehearsed with. So you got to be able to just adapt right then and there. You may only find out at
that's
sound
kind of a
check.
separate rule.
Yeah.
In that it's good to be up to date with different gear.
Right.
Just in case, like, oh, you want to, like, oh, sorry, we don't have an Axe Effect, but we have a Quad Cortex.
Yeah.
for example. Although an Axe Effects is easy to travel with, so might not be the best example.
No.
But okay, maybe we like to use real amps.
Yeah.
So we don't have a 5150 here. We have a hot rodded JCM 800.
Yeah.
So
Two
right,
different beasts.
two different boosts, and you have to be able to look at it and think, okay, well, how can I get this amp to sound close to my sound? And
Right.
it could be possible.
Yes. It could be possible, yeah, but you got to be able to just figure that out on the fly. Or another thing is, this is a big one, and we've all had this happen to us. What if your rig dies on you? Now, I've had this happen before. I used to run, back in the day, I was running a 4x12 cabinet, and the head that I had was a Randall RM100 back when amp modeling, uh, when, what's the word I'm looking for here? The physical amp modeling was a thing when it was hard, when it was all hardware. That's what I'm thinking of. It was similar to the Synergy technology. Randall made heads that just had slats in them, and you could put these different modules in there that modeled different types of amps. So, and I had a pedal board that was using the 4 cable method and everything, and I was getting all my distortion and everything from these modules. Band's about to go on. I turn the amp on. What happens? I blew a fuse.
Oof.
Now, I was thankful that first I was worried for a second, because it's like, dude, we're supposed to start now, but no sound, no nothing. So they had a spare combo amp there, and I just made things work. But that's the thing, though. When something like that happens, you got to be able to adapt on a moment's notice. Now, that means either bringing a spare rig with you,
Which
or
is obviously, that's kind of loaded because, like, we would not have room in the van to bring any spare rigs. We can bring, like, spare cables and equipment and tools to fix stuff. But when we're fully loaded up with the drum kit and everything, there's no way we would fit a spare Axe Effects.
right. But yeah, but I'm just saying, in general, though, those are kind of things you need to factor in, or let's say if you are running real amps, this is one of the reasons why you always need to this is one of the reasons why you always need to maintain a good relationship with everyone you're working with. Because first of all, you just need to be a good person in general. Don't be an
Well,
asshole.
yeah.
But also, if you're good to people, they'll want to help you. Let's say you're on a bill with another band, and they want to talk to you afterwards, or they want to talk to you beforehand.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're genuinely a good person and they think you're cool, and let's say your rig dies, if you go and ask them, dude, can I please borrow your rig, then they might be willing to do that. I know that if
Or
I
they might, even before you ask, they might even say, hey, if you want, you can just use my amp
right,
too. Especially if your rig dies, like what happened to you, like right before you go on.
yeah,
Then if you're chill with everyone and you all get along and like each other, someone like immediately did, oh, yo, just here, grab mine's already backline, just plug it into that, you can use it.
right,
And then sure, you might have to take a quick second and, dial it in a little bit so it works as good as you, but they'll do that. Obviously, if you're a dick, then
no,
they'll just watch you scram. They'll just watch you squirm and laugh about it later.
right,
Like, hey, did you hear that? Did you see that asshole's amp guy? That was hilarious.
yep,
And then they'll be pissed at you because that delayed the show.
yep, exactly, yep. So yeah, always be kind to people. So I don't want to give away all the secrets from for before we tell them all in the video. But I think it's time to I think I'm ready to wind this one down.
Yeah, I'm out of coffee and my throat's dry and I don't have anything else to drink.
That's very true. So why don't we wrap this up? Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I will let you all know. Yeah, that's what it sounds like when you live in the city. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. I will let you all know who the next guest is. In the meantime, y'all take care. Hit end.
The stream will stop immediately. You will no longer be live.
Yep.
Yep, hit end. All right, I get it.